guys, XFL Week 2 is in the books, and I'm here to react to it. Let's get to it! Honestly, probably not even really that big of a drop from Week 1. I was still super excited. There was 2 great games, especially the last one on Sunday night. The Houston versus St. Louis one was amazing! Jordan Ta'amu, P.J. Walker looking like 2 really good quarterbacks. I think P.J. Walker, Cardale Jones, Jordan Ta'amu are probably the 3 best quarterbacks. I want to see how Josh Johnson for LA kind of molds in once the season really gets underway, as well as Landry Jones for Dallas. I want to see him once he's kind of fully away from his injury, gets a little bit more reps under his belt in game time. And Brandon Silvers for Seattle, I think, has the potential to be really good. He just has too many mistakes. He really needs to clean up his game. But that's kind of like a broad strokes thing. Let's keep going with the broad strokes. Week 2, very hype. I went to my first game here in Los Angeles. It was amazing. It was so much fun. It's basically like being in one big outdoor garage, getting super hammered. Met up with the guys from the College Experience over on the Sports Gambling Podcast. Check them out. They're amazing. Colby Dant, Patty C. Those guys showed me a great time. They're a couple of real #garage boys, if you ask me. And I interviewed some people there tailgating. Let's get to that.
Here's the deal. XFL, future of football. We're going to make some waves in the NFL. Let's go.
There we go.
Everybody else, Raiders, 49ers, Chargers, no, Wildcats. You can just come out here for $20 a game and just fucking have a good time with your buddies. There it is. Or just watch some great football, either one.
I don't have anything to say, actually.
XFL Wildcats!
The game day experience here in Los Angeles was really fun. Better than I thought it would be. I'd never been to a pro game before, and this one was a great one to start with. I was so excited. I just wanted to take my shirt off and run on the field, but I was cordial. I had some liquor in me, so I was calm. But not at the game. I was excited. Oh, it was a blast. But let's go chronological. Let's start with the first game. New York Guardians versus DC Defenders. DC defense, oh my God, they came to play. Just first goose egg of the entire league for New York. I can't tell if it's more DC's defense looking fantastic, which I think they did, especially shutting down New York's run game. But New York definitely helped them out. Those rats really, really helped out the defenders. Matt McGloin looked awful out there, but they just couldn't get anything going on offense. And their run defense, as I suspected, was a little bit fraudulent for Week 1. Once they come up against teams that can actually run the ball fairly decently, they don't perform nearly as well. Interested to see where New York goes from here, especially offensively. McGloin really seemed dissatisfied with the play calling and possibly the coaching, but he was not looking great either. And DC looks to be, if not number 2 in the power rankings, probably number 1. They just look all around one of the better teams. They are fantastic. I'm very interested to see how they'll do once they face their first road game next week. It is Los Angeles, but LA with Josh Johnson was looking a little better, and that is all the way across the country that they'll have to fly. DC, looking real good right now. New York went all the way from number 4, I believe, in my power rankings, down to almost near the bottom. They are not looking great. Next game, the Tampa Bay Vipers flew all the way to Seattle to face the Dragons to a almost 30,000 person crowd. That was insane. Seattle, good for you. Props for getting that many people in for an XFL game. I love it. I want more cities to be like Seattle. Just take their example and go with that. You need to get hyped for this league. It's so good. Yeah. Dragons, not without their faults. This was kind of a close game throughout. Tampa Bay, their offense looked pretty good, but similar issues. They just can't convert. That red zone offense for them is terrible. They can't do anything. They can march down the field and then just stall out every time. It seemingly doesn't matter what quarterback they put back there. It's going to be the same regardless. And maybe that's on Mark Trestman, who is, again, my coward of the week, for A, terrible field goal decision. Like, you're going to kick a field goal to still be losing by a score. Like, what the... Makes no sense. And then also to go for 2 instead of 3 when he did it. But I'll get more into that when I actually go into the game. Seattle didn't look nearly as strong as Week 1, which is they looked worse in a win than they did in a loss. Feel kind of bad for him in that regard. Silvers just really needs to clean up his play. That's the main thing for Seattle. They have good players. Austin Proehl didn't even really get involved. He had one catch for -1 yards. Insane that a player like that can be not utilized. I think if they get Silvers to clean up his play, Seattle will be in a great place. Game number 3, the one I was there for, Los Angeles Wildcats host the Dallas Renegades in a pretty fun game. It was really close throughout, low scoring, but it was exciting. At least being there, it was really exciting. Both teams look a little bit better with their starting quarterbacks in. Dallas more so. LA has some work to do. I'm just going to be honest. They looked fairly decent. They looked better than week 1, but they just stall out so many times. So many penalties, so many issues for this team. They just can't crawl over this hump. But they do seem to be at least better than last week, which puts them over the New York Guardians for me. Them and Seattle are the 2 best worst teams. They're the top 2 of the bottom 4, if you know what I'm saying. The uniforms in person look really sharp. I like Dallas's colors. But generally, that's my takeaway from the Dallas-LA game is both teams look better, but they don't necessarily look good. Game number 4, and in my opinion, the best game of the weekend, maybe the best game of the whole thing. St. Louis, so far, every game they've played have been my favorite games. They've been the closest games so far. They lose 24-28 to Houston. Really good. I thought Houston was going to run away with it in the beginning, but then St. Louis claws back. Similar issues. This time it did come to bite them in the butt. They just can't shoot themselves in the foot and expect to win games. That's my main takeaway. Jordan Tomlin looked good, but he had 2 picks. I think if St. Louis can clean up some of these mistakes, they could possibly be the best team in the league. But without any further ado, let's do the deep dives into these games. Okay, everybody. First up, we've got the DC Defenders versus the New York Guardians, and whoo, boy, those Defenders put a whooping on the Guardians. Defenders 27, Guardians nothing. Not pretty for the Rats, and not pretty for Matt McGloin. Kind of comes out looking kind of like a baby back bitch. But there were some key aspects of the game, at least to me. Cardale Jones, again, looks great, especially compared to Matt McGloin. He's throwing bombs out there. He's looking studly. He's kind of proven why he's probably one of the, I want to say 2, but maybe 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in this entire league. DC looks like the Defenders got their running game going again. Donnell Pumphrey looking strong like I knew he could. Once the Defenders get all of their parts clicking, it's really going to be tough to beat them. Houston may be able to do it, but this Defenders team is looking strong. Speaking of all the aspects of the Defenders game, A.J. Johnson, traded from L.A., becomes an immediate factor, getting 1.5 sacks, getting a bunch of tackles, being super disruptive. The guy is just havoc incarnate. He was looking great in a Defender uniform. Otherwise, just the whole story, again, is Cardale on offense just making plays happen. There was a couple plays where it looked like he almost got sacked, but he just extended the play, gets rid of the ball. He had one boneheaded interception where he just should have thrown it away.
Here's Cardale. Throwing a 50-50 ball, and it's intercepted.
But other than that, he's looking fantastic. The other good thing for DC is probably a bad thing for New York, is I predicted this last week. New York Guardians' run defense is a little bit suspect. Their pass defense is great. I'm not going to dispute that, but their run defense is pretty meh to poor, I would say. Other broad strokes thing for the game, for New York, they had a couple real missed opportunities to at least maybe stay in the game. Second quarter, they had that missed interception, which was a sure thing, which I think maybe could have turned the tide for them. But the way that offense is playing, I'm not so sure. Even making some mistakes, DC kind of really easily handled this one. And they seem to have one big play in them every game.
Looked really good last week against Dallas. Pumphrey gives it back to Cardale Jones. It's caught. DeAndre Tompkins.
I hope they keep this up. I hope they keep up one cool play in every game that they're a part of. Because that would just be mine to me. I'm going to call it right now. Matt McGloin, you are our crybaby of the week. You did not have that big Lloyd McGloin energy, and just sounded like a real whiner out there, which maybe makes you think, is there trouble brewing in New York City? He did not seem happy with the way the offense was going this game, or the play calls he was getting, and he let it be known that he was unsatisfied. Can't imagine a coaching staff taking that very well. Matt McGloins probably a guy that speaks his own mind. We'll see what it gets him. But yeah, DC's run game looking super strong, opening up that pass game. They were just kind of all around good, even with a few tiny mistakes. And you love to see the energy when they win. They had that Twitter video of them just shotgunning beers, taking a little inspiration from St. Louis. So maybe a little bit copycat mentality there. It makes me very interested to see what will happen when St. Louis and DC play. That'll be one to keep our eyes on. There's a couple players I wanted to highlight in this game. Cardale Jones. The dude is just a tank. He's got a cannon for an arm. He was throwing dimes out there. He had that one really bad, stupid pick that he shouldn't have made. But other than that, he's just slinging like... How good he looked just highlighted how bad Matt McGloin looked. I mean, maybe the offenses weren't scheming him up, but even when he had guys open, he was just underthrowing, overthrowing, throwing to the wrong part of the route. Just not looking great, especially compared to how he was last week. At least last week he was decent. He had a lot of good energy to him. This week he was sulking, he was stalking the sidelines, and he just was whining. Another DC player I want to highlight is Donnell Pumphrey. The guy was incredible. This is what I wanted to see. This is what you know he can be as a runner. He doesn't hold the records in college for nothing. The guy, once he gets some open space, he's got speed to kill almost any team. DC, with all their runners, if they can lean into it, it really opens up the passing game for someone like Cardale Jones. Speaking of the passing game for DC, DeAndre Thompkins and Rashad Ross looked damn near great. That receiving core is, I was sleeping on them kind of, because I was more focused on this team's running game aspect, but they've got some dudes at wide receiver, and they're going to be really fun to watch. I think DC is a legitimate number 1 or 2 team in this entire league. I want to see him play St. Louis. I want to see him play everybody, but you're starting to see a gap. Other player for is A.J. Johnson. He came from LA, has immediate impact in both the feel of this defense and actually in the game. He had 1.5 sacks, putting pressure on Matt McGloin the entire game. The dude is a stud. Another player I want to highlight for DC, because I mean they did have the first shutout of the entire league, is Bunmi Rotimi. Guy was flying all over the place at linebacker. He was just looked like me when I'm hopped up on Adderall out there. This DC Defenders defense really surprised me. I guess it shouldn't because they're called the Defenders, but I was really taken aback by how good this defense looked. It might be that the Guardians' offense looked this bad. That would explain probably the shutout. But I did not expect the DC Defenders to be able to even look as good as they did, putting that much pressure on. I thought this would be kind of a more shootout-y kind of game. But, wow, they impressed wholeheartedly. New York did have one cool moment that I wanted to highlight, the fake punt.
You see what Justin Vogel is looking at, special teams player of the week, and it's a fake.
I love seeing plays like this. Either go for it on fourth or fake the punt. Keep that kind of energy alive. That's what XFL Jim lives for. The fake punts, the fake field goals, the crazy plays. That's what, just pump it right into my veins. Parting thoughts for this game. DC looks amazing. They look legitimate. They look scary. New York, you gotta fix some things, guys. That offense needs work. I don't even know if you need to restructure the plays you're calling, or if you need to talk to Matt McGloin, sit him down. The Guardians, I'll tell you this much. They're not getting any cheese this week. Okay, the next game we're talking about is Seattle versus Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay struggles keep on coming, and Seattle, while looking weak and having a bunch of mistakes, comes out the winner at home in front of a huge crowd, almost 30,000 people. Everyone knew they were one of the major markets along with St. Louis, so it was great to see Seattle come out and support the Dragons. Things about the game I want to highlight. Tampa Bay, still no offensive touchdowns for this team. What are they going to do? The quarterback's still a point of weakness. Taylor Cornelius looking shook. Quentin Flowers just having issues passing. I can see why they had him as a backup and mainly as a running back. He's pretty much only a run threat to him. It pains me to say this for Tampa, but it looks like Aaron Murray is probably their best chance to win, which does not bode well for this team. For Seattle, Brandon Silver's not looking great today, and even then they can still pull out a win. Granted, it's probably against the worst team in the league, but a win's a win. Seattle pulls it out 17-9. A couple things to take away from this game. Still super surprised that there are delays. I know it's only week 2, but you have the headsets and all the helmets for the skilled players on offense. Maybe the play clock, they're just still getting used to it in an actual game day environment, but come on, you gotta clean that up. But the flow of the game, Tampa, their offense was looking pretty decent for the most part. Same issue as last week. They can drive down the field, but once they get to the red zone, they just can't score. Seattle looking fairly weak in the first half, especially, and kind of once the second half comes around, once it's 9-0, they just come out doing pretty good. Austin Proehl kind of kept in check. Only had 1 reception for I think 0 yards. The main group I want to highlight for Seattle is that running back group with Casson Williams, Jaquan Gardner, and Kenneth Farrow. They were just, second half comes around, they just kept going and going. They couldn't be stopped. Trey Williams for Seattle looked fantastic as a receiver. He was kind of just a bright spot. Jaquiz Patrick for Tampa looked pretty good for the most part, but not a single player in this game got over 100 yards either receiving or rushing. So, kind of weak. I thought it was going to be a very boring, terrible game, and then it gets really exciting in the second half, and I like it. Pick 6, crazy for Tampa. Their first touchdown, their only touchdown of the league is a pick 6. Seattle with the crazy pick 6, the defensive lineman just coming out and That big man defensive touchdown, man, it gets to me. Yeah, for Seattle, the crowd noise was incredible. So many people there. You always hear about this stadium being nuts when it comes to noise, and they did not disappoint for the Dragons. I'm pretty sure they played a decent factor in a couple of those delay of game penalties. Main thing, just Tampa Bay, you can't finish drives, huh? Those snakes, those vipers. Meanwhile, the Dragons out here, even though they're playing with pretty sloppy with a bunch of mistakes, they'll at least finish their drives. And Mark Trestman, you are our coward of the week. 2 weeks in a row now. A, for kicking that field goal when it means nothing. Any play like that deserves to get blown up. You should just never call it. And just Mark Trestman just can't make us happy. He can't let us be happy. Seattle had a couple good plays. Trey Williams is probably the standout for me. Brandon Silvers kind of needs to clean it up. I'll say this every week. He needs to clean it up. He'll have his moments, but he just plays kind of sloppy. Overall, really fun game, really close. Excited to see where Seattle's headed in the future. I think if they just clean up their mistakes, they have one of the scariest receiver groups in the entire league. They can compete with almost anybody. They didn't get blown out by DC until later in the game. And if Brandon Silvers can actually clean up his play, this team will be good. I'm calling it right now. Anyway, excited for where Seattle's headed in the future. Tampa, I honestly have no idea. Their best bet is if Aaron Murray can play like he's in Georgia. So maybe dress in black and red or whatever. Okay, the next game we're talking about is the Los Angeles Wildcats versus the Dallas Renegades. Now, I was at this game, and boy, was it a blast. Hooked up with Colby Dant and Patty C from the college experience, and they were super fun. Game day experience at LA. Surprisingly, a great time. Wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was based on LA not really loving football. You know how this city is. LA looked alright. Josh Johnson looked surprisingly decent. I didn't expect him to do much because it's his first start, but he was surprisingly good. I was very alright with the way he played. For Landry Jones, he looked alright, but I mean, I guess it's similar to Josh Johnson. It was his first start, so can't really expect too much, but I thought he would be a little bit better. The game overall, not extremely exciting. It was alright. It was kind of a low-scoring game, close throughout, 3-3 for the most part, and then Dallas kind of ran away with it near the end. Stadium was great. I like Dignity Health Park or whatever it's called. LA's going to have some pretty good home crowds from what I can tell. So far, LA looks pretty decent. That defense looked alright. Not really a noticeable change from week 1 to week 2. Which is interesting, being as they fired their defensive coordinator after 1 week, which I still think is a little preemptive. We'll have to see how they progress throughout the rest of the season, but I still think Winston kind of brash move there. Spruce looks pretty good. He looked pretty good out there, having a couple really key catches. But the main story was Dallas just looking a little bit better. They're still looking like kind of a middle-league team. LA is definitely not the worst team, and they did not look like the worst team this weekend. I would probably say they look better than both New York and Tampa Bay. I think once Josh Johnson gets a little bit more comfortable at quarterback, they should be fairly decent. Dallas will probably keep trending upwards the more starts Landry Jones has. He just needs to get comfortable. Hal Mummy's offense will work out eventually. The air raid always seems to favor these kinds of quarterbacks. They're going to be a good team. I think Dallas will eventually prove to be a decent team, but right now it's Houston and DC as the clear favorites, with St. Louis probably as the next closest up. Had a great time. Was pretty slammered throughout the whole game. I'll probably tweet a little bit more at XFL_Jim on Twitter about a little bit more in depth on what I thought about both these teams throughout the week. So far, come away 2 thumbs up for my XFL game day experience. LA needs a little bit more work. Josh Johnson needs some more time in this offense, and I'm thinking the same thing with Landry Jones. Give them more time, they'll be good. The defense for Los Angeles, surprisingly pretty good, even without A.J. Johnson. I was very happy to see their defense look as decent as they did. Dallas, come away with a win. You can chalk it up to luck or whatever you want, but they probably deserve it. The uniforms for both teams, sharp. Very sharp. I like the colors for Los Angeles, and Dallas is, the shade of blue they have just pops. Cameron Artis-Payne for Dallas was everything. He kept him in the game. He kept him ahead. He just kept being a workhorse for him. And the dude for LA was Nelson Spruce. I'm going to say Cameron Artis-Payne, dude for Dallas, and Nelson Spruce, dude for Los Angeles. Those guys were probably the big standouts. As of this week, the way that all the teams looked, I'll put Los Angeles above both New York and Tampa Bay for now. Okay, for our last game, we've got St. Louis versus Houston. Houston won 28-24. Was a really good game. Both quarterbacks looking amazing. Honestly, similar to last week, St. Louis just kind of keeps shooting themselves in the foot. And unlike last week, it bites them in the ass. They come up short. I think, though, this shows that we have a pretty solid 3 teams that are on the top layer above everyone else. First off, I wanted to highlight P.J. Walker. The guy looked great, just slinging it like crazy. The dude's probably the best quarterback in the whole league. He's just a baller. He's a gamer.
Walker pumps again, still looking, dancing, firing. It's caught for the touchdown. A bullet to Cam Phillips for 6.
I wouldn't be surprised next year to see him on an NFL roster. The guy's just a stud. Jordan Tomu looked great too. He had 2 pretty bad picks.
And this is an offense that's really...
This one, though, is picked off. It's Cody Brown. He's got it with some room and blocks inside the 30. Brown cuts back, looking for the end zone. Cody Brown!
players.
Tomu into traffic, and it's intercepted. Jeremiah Johnson. Johnson with some blocks inside the 40. Johnson turns on the speed inside the 10.
And aside from that, he was on fire. St. Louis's offense was doing really good the whole day, aside from the turnovers. But I think this really shows that we have an upper crust. Let's start with St. Louis. Jordan Tomu looked great. DeMorney Pearson-Allen had some really key receptions.
Another pass.
Third down needed. Got it. Conversion for a first down. And still going. It's Pearson-Allen working his way to the end zone.
Tomu and Jones on the ground were kind of just getting it done. They seem to be getting it done, and then all of a sudden, interception, or they'd be going for it, all of a sudden, penalties, just killing drives. I think they could be a really good team. St. Louis is turning into my... I'm wanting them to win. I want them to win so bad. As for Houston, man, the whole story for them right now is P.J. Walker. The guy is just killing it. He's like the XFL's Pat Mahomes. He can take plays that look like they're blown up and just make something out of them. The guy's fantastic. I can't wait to see what they can do the rest of the year. I'll be honest, I was pretty wasted after my game from LA watching this one, so I'm coming at it from that angle, but I rewatched a little bit of it, catching some highlights, and oh man. So far, St. Louis has played, in my opinion, the 2 best games of the entire XFL. Watch out for Houston here on out. I can't see a team really competing with them until they play DC. And for St. Louis, any team, they can play any team close. And that'll cover week 2 of XFL action here on the XFL Jim channel. Main takeaways of the game. Let's do one takeaway from each game. First game, main takeaway from New York Guardians versus DC Defenders. DC looks amazing. Their defense, surprisingly good. With that offense and that defense, they could easily be the number 1 team. New York Guardians need to figure out what they want to do on offense, especially at quarterback. Need to figure out Matt McGloin into the system. Main takeaways for each team for the second game of Tampa Bay Vipers versus Seattle Dragons. Seattle, clean up Brandon Silver's play. If you get him going, if he can be just mediocre to if he can just be decent. If Brandon Silvers could just be decent, you could be an amazing team. I'm just saying it flat out. They have a great wide receiver core. If Brandon Silvers is decent, that team can be amazing. Main takeaway for Tampa, figure out what the hell you want to do at quarterback. I don't know what it is. They can't get any of their quarterbacks to work. I want to know what Mark Trestman's even thinking. Stop being... I'm giving them 2. Mark Trestman, stop being a goddamn coward. I don't want Tampa Bay to be my cowards of the week 3 weeks in a row. Just fix it up. Takeaway for game number 4, LA versus Dallas. Takeaway for LA, just team chemistry. Keep building it. Just be patient. I think they can do it. That's honestly my takeaway for both teams. If they just get some more chemistry in on the teams, kind of get a bit more flow going to them, I think both these teams can be all right. Those are my takeaways for both LA and Dallas. Takeaways for the 4th and final game. Takeaway for St. Louis, clean up your play. No more penalties. Stop the stupid penalties. And Jordan Ta'amu just kind of, just calm down, my man. You're good. We all know you're good, but you just need to calm down. Stop throwing so many picks. Ta'amu, come on. Main takeaway for Houston. If the game is in P.J. Walker's hands, you're golden. Try and make every game a shootout if you're Houston, because that offense is the best in the league. Just going to say it. They might not have the best numbers, but they are probably the most efficient offense. And they're really fun to watch. P.J. Walker's amazing. Those are my main takeaways. Power rankings: 1, Houston; 2, DC; 3, St. Louis; 4, Seattle; 5, Dallas; 6, LA; 7, New York; 8, Tampa Bay. Those are your power rankings, your XFL Jim power rankings for week number 2. Let's get it. Week number 3 is going to be epic. I'm so excited.